one of the things that I wanted to do as I built a team and helped grow around the world was to take the Keller Williams culture, our systems, models, training, education, and go to different countries. The first thing that everybody will say is it's different here. And the next thing that I say is, oh, you don't go to sleep at night. You don't wake up in the morning and go to the toilet. You don't want to take care of your family. You don't want to have a better life. And then all of a sudden the answer comes back. Yes, I want.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. I am so super excited today. I've got Bill Soteroff. He is the leader of Keller Williams Global. That's right. We're not talking local. We are talking global. And, you know, guys, this is one of those things that can give you a lot of a belief in yourself, because you can start off with a crappy job and then get to the top. And we're going to talk about that today. Bill, welcome to the show, my friend.
Steve, thanks for having me on your 3M podcast. You know, I've been excited about this. I've been waiting for it for a long time. I know that you went through all the other interesting people until you got to me. So I appreciate that you've gone so long into the podcast. You've had so many people listen to what you've been doing that, as I said, you're down to me now.
Well, you know, the list ran out and we were just kind of looking around, and I saw this card that was, you know, when you clean out the laundry and there's that little lint catcher, I pulled this card out of the lint catcher. Oh, maybe I should call this guy. And it came up. But in all seriousness, you know, the first time that I actually was able to enjoy listening to you talk to an audience was down at Keller Williams family reunion at the Canadian party at, I forget what the name of the location was. But you had such a great speech that was there, and it was just really moving. You know, there's so many people that have known and cared about you for so long that it was just, I've got to get to know this guy. And then I saw you again at Mega Camp. I think I saw you twice at Mega Camp. And then I saw you at the event in Toronto, and it's just, you're so prolific in the amount of information that you give out to people. I really wanted to help and bring that message to the audience.
Well, I appreciate you saying all of that. You've been to a lot of events. You know, I've run events where there's not very many people there. And then as we've grown over the years, we get more and more people. I love saying this, and it's a little bit of a joke for myself, is that when we start off for an awards banquet or at family reunion or mega camp, you could put 4 people in a booth at Tim Hortons, and you know, you start from there and then all of a sudden grow. The events that you mentioned I'm really proud of. Our team at KW Canada put them together. We had more than 600 people at family reunion for a night of glitter, and we didn't expect that, to be very truthful with you. And then a couple of other events that we've had on Rainy Street when we had Mega Camp. We took over a location and made it Canada House and put Canadian flags in. I tried to sell as many Bloody Caesars as I could, but it seemed like while they were in Austin, there were other drinks that were being had, so that part was good. Yeah. But in the events that you've mentioned, I'm really proud of the fact that we've got more involvement, we've got more people, we're getting more gratification, and that exchange of information is occurring. And I think for a long time it didn't happen. So I'm really proud that you noticed that and that you were there. Thank you.
Well, further to that, when I look at, I mean, you go to family reunion, and that's just something to behold. I think, what is there, like 20,000 agents or something like that?
Yeah, between 18 and 20,000 every year.
Yeah, so 20,000 attendees. And when we were the last time at was it Mandalay Bay, I think it was, and the whole army of Canadians with the flags are walking down and chanting and that sort of thing. It was just amazing to see that. But then you couple that with, I mean, the idea is, yes, you know, you're wearing the red shirt. You might think that that's just Canada, but that's actually Keller Williams color as well. But it was the global presence as well that I was really intrigued by, because there was the one event, which was the global event, and you've got people from all different parts of South America, all over people from the UK, all over Europe and beyond. And that I found really super interesting to see that growth, because I think that's been dramatic.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. So yes, I have 2 different parts of my life, you know, as I go forward. And I never imagined, as you were mentioning, referring to at the beginning of my career, I did not see this happening. This was not a career that was orchestrated for me. It just kind of happened as I went along. one part of my life is the regional OP of KW Canada. We have almost 5,000 agents in 31 market centers now, and we've just opened 2 new market centers, 4 last year. So we're really proud of the business that we've built. Our market centers are averaging in excess of 150 to 250 agents per market center versus all of our competitors that have 3, 6, 9, 12, 20 agents in an office. Right now, in difficult economic times, having more agents in a market center for profitability is essential. So that's one part of my life. On the other part, and I'm very proud of this, it's the way I started at Keller Williams, is that about 11 years ago, I came to KW and made an agreement with Gary Keller, with Mark Willis, and started the worldwide business for KW. The first few years, we expanded to 3 or 4 countries, and then every year growing until now. We just secretly, I'll tell you, I just signed an agreement last week for our 60th country. And a little bit more than 20,000 agents. So
Wow.
in 10 years or 11 years, I'm proud of that growth. One of the things that I wanted to do as I built a team and help grow around the world was to take the Keller Williams culture, our systems, models, training, education, and go to different countries. The first thing that everybody will say is it's different here. And the next thing that I say is, oh, you don't go to sleep at night. You don't wake up in the morning and go to the toilet. You don't want to take care of your family. You don't want to have a better life. And then all of a sudden the answer comes back. Yes, I want.
Well, that comes from your 3-ply beginnings, right? I mean, as a toilet paper sales rep at the beginning, you really learned that everybody else
times now we've got to explain.
Everybody else is the same.
So in disclosure, I used to work for Abitibi Price. I started my career in the paper business. So all the paper that you touch or see in different areas, I worked for a company that either manufactured it or distributed it. Yeah. One of the products that we distributed was toilet paper.
There you go.
And I make the joke that people always wanted to buy 2-ply or 3-ply toilet paper, and the founder of the business, used to look at me and say, "Bill, I don't understand why anybody would want to do that. All you have to do is fold it over, and you can have 3, 4, 5, or 6-ply toilet paper."
That's right.
And then for any of you who have young daughters, you'll know how much toilet paper is used. And so I've used that reference many, many times, all those things. But that's where I started in the paper business. The other part of the joke, of course, was that when we were going public, I did a presentation in front of some New York investors. And the founder of this part of the business was sitting beside me, and he'd been a war veteran. He was in his probably 80s or 90s when I met him. And he was at the end of the table, and we were listening to all the financial people talk about things that were occurring, and we really weren't paying attention. And questions started to come up about the operation of the business. And the CEO of the company finally leans forward at the table in New York City with a question that I think came from Citibank or JP Morgan or something like that. What's the product that you make the most amount of money on? What has the largest margin? What do you dominate in? All those things. And the CEO leans forward and says, "Bill, do you want to answer? Do you want to take this one?" And I really wasn't listening at all. I was talking to the founder, and we were having a conversation. So I listened to the answer, and I said, "Well, it's toilet paper. Toilet paper is number one. It should be number one in your program. It's number one in our program. It's number one." And everybody gasps. And then I said, "Okay, well, let me show you how important this is. For all of those in the audience," and there's probably 300 or 400 people in the audience, "for all of those in the audience who used toilet paper this morning, could you please stand up?" And hesitatingly, almost everybody stands up. And I said, "For those of you that are not standing up, thank you for coming here today and understanding a little bit more about our products. I will not be shaking hands with you to say goodbye." And everybody started laughing and going forward. So that was my introduction to public speaking. That was my introduction to Wall Street. And my CEO never really liked that answer, but made me happy as well. So
see, I thought it would have been number 2, like something else number 1, and it just would have been number 2. That would have just been mine, but
you see
You
all
know,
the humor and it starts a lot of conversations in different places. So
yeah, it does. Well,
that's
it's almost. I mean, potty humor in real estate, I think, are the two number one things, other than religion and politics, that people talk in a household.
my son had
And
a my son had a son, which is, by the way, one of the greatest things to watch your children have children. But
wow.
my grandson is now just a little bit more than 1 year old, and
Mm.
he has a sister. He's joined a sister. But I tell my son all the time, everybody poops, and you're going to be a poop expert. And he's a lawyer and he's a businessman, and he shakes his head. He just walks away from me. But I've learned now as a grandfather that I call my son's name out and say, "Hey, pal, it's your job now. You take over." And he goes, "Yeah, I wish you wouldn't have told me so much about poop, Dad." So there is a lot of humor that comes from that. But, it's a serious life, and life is serious, and some of the things that we do. So I use those stories for levity.
Absolutely. Well, when you go back to the idea of Keller Williams Global and you first go into a country and they say, well, everything's different here, you've just, leveled the playing field. Well, no, everybody does the same thing. And so find the similarities and then adjust for the changes.
Yeah. And the similarities are that every single person on the planet wants to have a better life. Everybody wants, everybody has to go to sleep someplace. And
Yeah.
even in the rubble of war-torn Europe, and I lived in Europe for many years and started a business in Europe, and I lived in Austria, Germany. At the end of World War II, these countries were devastated and survived and grew and came forward. And I say this to people is, even in difficult economic times, you want to take care of your family, you want to take care of your children, and you want a nice place to live. And it could be a trailer in Oklahoma, or it could be a nice villa in the south of France, but that's your place.
Yeah.
And so that's the business that we're in, quite frankly, is that we're in a situation where we absolutely want to make sure that we take care of everybody. And we and as real estate agents, to be very truthful with you, it's not easy sometimes. People want different things. People want to buy and sell, and they are in a difficult situation. One of the things that I say when I go around the world is that we as real estate agents become the most important necessity to people's lives when they want to buy, when they want to sell, or when they want to make a decision about their family finances.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that conversation is, as people go through life, you might be by yourself and living in your parents' basement. That's the beginning of your life. Then you perhaps find a partner, or you move and go by yourself. That's the next step. You go to college and get education, or you leave and want to rent a place with some people or friends. And then all of a sudden you meet somebody and you have a partner, and you might have a child. And as those transitions occur, things start to snowball and change. And, usually the people you can trust are your parents. And the story that I tell, of course, is that, the last time your parents bought a property could have been 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And you know that they're going to give you heartfelt advice. They're not going to mislead you, but it may not be the best financial advice. So the estate agent around the world becomes that very valuable person in people's lives, as I said, when they want to buy or sell a property. And sometimes it's not of their own volition. If there's a death in the family, or illness, or a force change, or a move, a job change. We've seen all of those things happen before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And as those things happen, what I want to do is I want to set up our agents around the world to have customers and clients who can rely on them to give good advice about when or what to buy or sell. The number one
Absolutely.
question, of course, is when will the interest rates go down that I should buy? And, and the answer that I always give when anybody says that to me is, what's the stock market going to do tomorrow? And
Yeah,
I don't
the
know either.
crystal ball is broken.
It's broken.
Yeah.
All you can do is take your best guess and best example. My wife and I talk about buying our first house. I was very honored. Gary Keller wrote a book called My First Home, and my wife and I are in the book. And it talks about, that fledgling little family 40 years ago plus. Interest rates were 18% in Burlington, Ontario, Canada. And I said to my wife, because the interest rates had been 22%, And I said to my wife, we've got to buy now. The interest rates will never be lower. My daughter, a few years ago, bought a house, and the interest rates were 2%.
Yep.
And my wife elbows me all the time. Hey, Mr. Smarty Pants, did you predict 2%? And my daughter, of course, looks at that, and now when interest rates now have risen to 6%, says, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to buy another place. They're always going to be 6% or higher. How can people live? And what people don't understand is around the world, the average interest rates plus or minus 6%, and many countries have 16, 17, 18%. And you survive and you go forward and you deal with it, depending on the country, the economic situation, the political atmosphere, what the banks can control and what they can't control. And we're not in control of any of those things. So I think that real estate agents get to be.
Yeah, with your exposure, looking at the history you've had with real estate, coupling that with your global exposure, how's your financial mindset evolved? Especially when you look at today that a lot of them are adapting to a shift that's happening in the market.
So a shift happens in the market. Shift happens in a market. And again, Gary Keller wrote a really great book called Shift. But in general, a shift happens virtually in every market around the world about every 7 years. What happens, of course, is that companies and people change, so that the CEO of a bank wasn't there 8 years ago to see that shift. So the shift comes along and it's brand new to them. And they think, oh my gosh, I'm the first person this has ever happened to. In the world, fortunately or unfortunately, there's wise people who have been around for a while. That's somebody like me I've been through 7 recessions in my life. There is life after recession.
Mm.
Do you know where the word recession came from when it deals with the economy?
No, I don't.
Do you know where the word depression comes from?
Probably how you feel at that moment, but otherwise I don't.
In the United States, in 1865 was the Civil War, and immediately before and after the Civil War was an economic difficulty. At the turn of the century in 1900, there was another difficulty. In 1914, there was an economic difficulty in Europe. Each one of these economic difficulties caused a war: Civil War in the United States, a World War, Boer War in South Africa, a World War for World War I. So leaders around the world were terrified of another economic difficulty. What happens in the 1930s after the crash in 1929 is the 1930s come along with an economic difficulty. The President of the United States at the time was very scared about calling it a recession. Recession was a bad word. And because you get a receding hairline. A depression was a better word. So he hired a public relations person to come up with a word that he could use, and the word was depression. And depression is a bump in the road. Mm-hmm. You go through it and you come out the other side. Well, of course, in today's society, depression has that mention, that feeling of the 1930s that you and I never lived through. There probably isn't anybody alive that lived during that time. But if you say depression, all you think of is Dust Bowl and people out of work and soup lines and Wall Street bankers jumping out of buildings. You think about all those things. But that was brought about because the word recession, which meant receding hairline that doesn't usually come back, was even worse. So it's very interesting.
I say the recession is a little bit more efficient. I wouldn't say worse if we're talking about hairlines.
But I always find it's a very interesting thing because each generation takes a look at this, and we'd rather have a recession than a depression, and the people in the depression would have rather have had a depression rather than a recession.
I think there's a lot of things that we have. There's a lot of things that we have that is basically the same thing. It just gets a new label with a couple extra features.
And that's what I said to you. You know, each business manager, each CEO, each country leader, all of a sudden this comes along and it's surprising to them. Oh my gosh, I'm the first person this has happened to, and this has never happened before. One of the ways that our company got through COVID, and I was very proud of all of our countries. I think we probably had about 50 or 55 countries around the world. I had 27 offices in Canada at the time. I was very proud of the way everybody came through COVID because we took an atmosphere of we're not going to leave anybody behind. We're going to make sure that we go forward and we take care of people, including people in the industry. So we set up a program of phoning people in the real estate industry or people that we knew to make sure that we had care calls to say, are you all right? Because isolation and loneliness are difficult mental issues. So we took care of all of our people and we spread that to as many people as we could. And then the next step after that, this won't last forever. Even the plague in the 1500s came and went. Now, that lasted 100 years, so we didn't want COVID to last 100 years.
We did pretty good then.
But what we said was, we're not leaving anybody behind. We've got to find a way to go about this, and there's going to be a finish line. So we've got to make sure that there's as many people as possible at the finish line with us, because this too will come to an end. And it did. Now, COVID might be out there like the flu, by the way. Flu killed in excess of 18 million people in the flu epidemic in 1918. More people died of the influenza than died in World War I.
Wow.
And we never took COVID seriously in some countries around the world. So that's why one of the things that we talk about at KW is we make sure we take care of people no matter whether it's a perceived threat or whether it is a threat. It could be an economic threat. It could be a virus like this. But the answer to it is we need to stick together to make sure that we put a plan together so that we come out of it at the other end.
When we look at the jab, I'll call it, of COVID, then it was followed with the cross of the financial instability that happened afterwards, the boom, and then we'll call it the bust or the recession or the depression, whatever we want to call it. We'll use a word. That's prompted that there's a resilience that has to come in all industries, and real estate agents are no different. What do you think that new agents and seasoned agents need to do to cultivate a really good money mindset that they can have not just short-term, but long-term success adjusting to these shifts in the changing market?
Well, the phrase long-term always has different implications. If you talk to a real estate agent, long-term is Sunday to the open house. What I talk about is, Gary Keller thinks 20 years into the future. I need him around because he's a visionary and he sees things and he takes a look. He's Spock. He plays three-dimensional chess and he thinks 20 years in the future. My job is to think 5 or 10 years in the future. I sign contracts for people that are 10 or 20 years long, and I give them a path of growth and development so they can see things at least 5 or 10 years into the future. And if they follow the model, then they'll see a path. And then, of course, market center owners, OPs of market centers in the Keller Williams world, should think annually or 1 or 2 years in the future. Team leaders and MCAs should think monthly. And of course, agents should think daily, weekly, and monthly to have a strategy. Now, with all those things occurring, I always say to people, do your job. And one of the things that happens from that is that I have people say to me, well, I have a 20 or 30 or 40-year strategy. My answer always is, what's the stock market going to do tomorrow? How would you feel like that if you were sitting there in Ukraine and you woke up one day and Russian tanks were coming across the border? There's a lot of things that are beyond our control. Now, most of the countries that I work in and I live in, I'm very fortunate that we're isolated and have protection. And I really honor those that serve and help us and give us a free life. Those people who are soldiers, sailors and airmen or women and Coast Guard and police and first responders who make sure that we have a really good life. That sentence of racing towards the fire isn't lost on me at all, because we get to have that life. I could drive on any highway in Ontario or Texas, across the United States or across Canada, and not have to worry about an incursion or a difficulty that removes all of these things. So given the fact that we live in those and work in some of those environments, what is long-term? The founding fathers of most countries again, frailing fathers. They should have had some mothers on those committees. But they thought in 4 or 5 year stints. In the United States, there's an election every 4 years. In Canada, every 5 years. In Commonwealth countries, every 5 years. And that changes the thinking and moves things around. So long term for country development is 5 years. I have lived in Asia, in China, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, in the Southeast Asia. Most leaders think in generations. Most leaders think in 100-year stints rather than what would be done in 1, 3, or 5 years. If you went to any leader or business person on the planet and say, what is your plan for the next 100 years? What do you think their answer would be?
Yeah, that's a very difficult one for them to answer. And
they wouldn't be able to answer it because they don't think in those terms. They don't think in those directions.
I think quarterly, typically. I know I did a lot of consulting for Fortune 1000 companies, and to try to get them to think past 2 or 3 quarters, it's impossible because they have to answer to the shareholders.
And that's one of the difficulties of business, and I'm going to give a criticism of business in the world, is that they answer to their shareholders. They think quarterly, and they don't think strategically, and they don't think long term, and they don't think for all the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders in a business? The first thing that most people will say are the shareholders. I think there's 4 stakeholders in every business: the investors, the stakeholders, the consumer, the employees, and the vendors. Yep. All of those people have a stake in the business.
Yep.
For a better part of 100 years, American industry battled with unions. As a matter of fact, Ford brought in the National Guard and shot their own employees in Michigan. Now we are at a time when we take a look at this and say, we want consumers, we want people to buy the products, we want the vendors to supply the raw material for those products, we want the employees to make them, and now we're hearing more and more about employees having a fair living wage. And then, of course, we want the shareholders to make money so that they'll continue to invest. So I think for 100 years, America lost its way in looking at just shareholders. I think that there's a lot of people involved. In the business that I'm in, which is the real estate industry, we have people buying and selling. We have banks. We have those people that can invest in them. And then, of course, we have a transition so that every 3, 5, 7, 10, 20 years, somebody will buy and sell a property. And hopefully the real estate industry, the real estate agent will be involved in that industry and help people make those financial decisions. As I said before, it's really important to bring in those people to give you consultation to help you with those decisions. The reason why I'm saying all this is that I think if you think strategically, there's a lot of people who are born, live, and die in their own property. No question about it. And they transition that to the next generation. But how many times have we heard that, I live in Canada, and we talk about cottage country, and the number one problem that comes in families with the transition in cottage country is that somebody, partners, have 4 children. The mom and dad die. They leave the property to their 4 children. The 4 children all have 4 children. And then all of a sudden there's 16, 18, 20 people that want to go to the cottage for Canada Day on July 1st. What happens? Not the easiest transition. Nobody planned for it. Nobody took a look at it. Nobody looked at it. Mom and dad said, hey, my job is done. I got a place for my family to be at on July 1st. But they never thought about the next 25 or 35 years after that. That's when professionalism comes forward and helps out. We have an agent currently in Toronto that's going through that transition with a family home that's been in their family for 100 years and is going through a transition to make sure that they can keep the property in the family and make sure that it's properly taken care of going forward. And that might mean bringing other families into the location, but it's creative and it's doing something differently. The reason why I mention all these things is every single community in every single country has all of these challenges.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've covered a lot of the things around the money mindset. The next thing I want to talk about mentorship, because I think a lot of things you're alluding to is people need to find themselves a really good mentor. And it might be a mentor for a minute. It might be a mentor for a year. It might be a mentor for, longer, but it's the idea that it's easier and it's probably more wise to learn from somebody else's growth and mistakes than it is for you to learn from your own. It's more tragic to do it yourself. I mean, it's noble, but it's tragic. But to learn from somebody else's, you can get so much more accelerated. My question to you is obviously there's people within the Keller Williams community of who you lean on to. Who are your mentors? Who do you learn from?
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to say that there's a differentiation between a mentor and a coach.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
people talk about my coach, my coach, my coach, my mentor, my mentor. In my era, a mentor was somebody who kind of guided you along and shepherded you through good things and bad things. My opinion is that I think that you seek and select advice, different word from coaching and mentoring, advice from different people at different times in your life, and that could come from different places, different people. The people I'm involved in are my teams that I work with. I have a team in Canada and I have a team that works in worldwide. Those people inspire me and guide me as much as anybody else. And my worldwide team, JP Lewis, April Mitchell, Addison, are people who I rely on every day and I listen to them. They're all smart. They're all young. They do things. And as I go forward, they'll change my behavior, give me coaching and mentoring and training so that I know how to improve myself all the time. And that's an example in one instance where they're not official. Maybe they don't even know exactly what they do, but we do what's called a stand-up every morning at 9:30 with them. No matter where you are in the world, no matter what you're doing, it could be, I have two people right now who are in Asia, so they're still on the stand-up at 9:30. And I don't think they fully understand the impact they have on me and they have on the other team members. Gary Keller is somebody who's my coach and mentor, and one of the reasons why I came to KW is because I had watched him as a competitor. I was with Remax for 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with and for the founder of Remax, and my time there was done, and I knew it was time to move on. And I started teaching in school at the University of Colorado, the J.P. Morgan School of Business. And I thought that was going to be my path forward until I got a call that said, we want to start the worldwide business at Keller Williams. And I realized listening to Gary Keller's words of wisdom and the way he delivers those words of wisdom is something that I had missed for a long time. Gary has never told me to do anything. He gets me to come around to different thoughts and ideas. And as I come forward and bring them forward, he'll tell me whether that's a good path forward or not a good path forward. It's a very unusual way of doing business, I've found. He's never said no. He's never stopped me, and he's never told me. But he has inspired us to grow to 20,000 agents in 60 countries in 10 years. And I realize that he's been there every step of the way for us. I'm transitioning now in the last year to Mark Willis, who's the CEO of Keller Williams. He's a person who I knew 10 years ago. He actually was part of the hiring process for me when I started with Keller Williams, and then a hiatus of 10 years, and now he's back with that. His style is a little different. He's a lot more direct. He'll give you facial expressions. He'll give you advice. He'll ask questions. He's also very much a bottom line guy. Why aren't you growing? Where are the opportunities for you to grow? What opportunities would you like to create for growth? So he's very direct in all of those things. And the reason why he's doing that is he's getting you to think differently, because we have come through economic difficulties, political difficulties, COVID, and he wants to remind you about the one thing, and that's growth and profitability.
Yeah.
So it's good to have different people at different times. I once had somebody in my life that was a coach, a life coach, very famous. He was around a long time, and I was making a life decision. And I can remember standing, pacing back and forth and asking him what I should do. And he gave me the answer. He gave me some direction, and it was absolutely the wrong decision for me. And I always remembered that. I always remember it now. Is, to me, the best mentor and coach isn't that person who gives me direction. It's a person who coaches you to be better. That person who mentors you to be better. That person who suggests how you can be better, what you can do. But that, in my case, in this one instance, and obviously that person's no longer a coach for me, but in that one instance, he gave me advice that was wrong. And he felt like his job was to give me that direction and give me and tell me something when that's not what I should have done. It might have been good for him. It might have been something, but for me and my family, it wasn't the best decision.
Yeah. It's very interesting when you look at coaching, mentoring, and giving advice and all that goes around with it. Obviously, in real estate or in legal and mortgages, there can be, outcomes that happen that are legal as a result of giving bad advice or maybe not full advice or full disclosures. But when you look at that whole life coaching or that whole space, it doesn't have the same parameters. As you said, in this situation, it was wrong. How do people avoid that bad advice? How do people get into just, how did you say, no, that was wrong. I'm going to cut my own path and do the right thing?
So choosing and selecting your coach, your mentor, your leader is the first step. Most people will just gravitate to somebody who's been recommended to them. It's that same kind of situation. Hey, I'm new in the area. Do you know a dentist? I want to go there, instead of doing that background.
Yep.
I had a person that I knew many years ago. Stan Weinberg was his name. He was from Connecticut. His wife was one of the first female mayors in Connecticut. And Stan came to see me one time, and he said that he had prostate cancer. And I said, "Oh my gosh, Stan, that's terrible. What is your path? What are you going to do? What does the doctor say?" And he said to me, "Well, Bill, I haven't chosen my doctor yet. I'm going to Sloan Kettering. I'm going to go to Cleveland Clinic. I'm going to go to Yale Medical, and I'm going to choose and interview my doctor." I went, "Whoa, you interview professionals? You interview your doctor?" He goes, "Well, I want to know the best path forward." Now, I saw him a few years later, and he was fine and healthy, thankfully. And he had chosen his own path he chose a medical professional, chose his own path, and gone forward with that. Now, that taught me something as a young man. What it taught me is that choosing and selecting your banker, your company, your CEO, your boss, your mentor, your coach, your leader, all of those things, that's a process. That's a situation that you go through. You don't just accept what's given to you or thrown at you. I laugh because every year I go for an annual medical, and the doctor will say to me, "I think we should do this, this, and this." And I'll say, "Well, I need 3 different pieces of advice." And the system isn't set up for that. And my doctor, who I've been going to now for 10 years, knows me and laughs. And she says to me, "I've already given you 3 points of advice. You're not going anywhere else. I know what you're doing. You're going to take my advice and you're going to go forward with that. And I'll see you in 3 months." And part of that, and the reason why I explain that is I want somebody who can interact with me, knows my sense of humor, knows when I'm serious, and knows when it's overly serious and I need to go and see 1, 2, or 3 people for advice. When it comes to a coach or a mentor, you also have to know when it's time to leave and go on to the next coach or mentor or leader. It's not wrong in today's society to change jobs because the company has changed or the leader has changed or something is occurring. It's not wrong to change your coach or your mentor when you're in a different situation because you change. The man I am today, after 45 years of marriage, after 45 years of graduating from university, after being in business, after 7 recessions, I'm a substantially different person than I was as a graduate in 1978 of the University of Western Ontario. Very different.
Yeah.
And by the same token, the people that I brought in as my coaches, mentors, and leaned on, from my professors to my first bosses and is substantially different. Now, you're going to laugh a little bit about this. I have two people that I never imagined that would give me as much advice as I get today. One has been with me for 45 years. That's my wife, who has turned into my best friend, my best confidant, my best business partner, the best person for my advice. Her business acumen, she's a special education teacher. Her business acumen is better than most CEOs that I've met anywhere else. And I trust and rely on her more than anybody else. The second coaching and advice that I've been getting recently is from my 1-year-old, 16-month-old grandson and 3 almost 4-year-old granddaughter. Now, why? Because they make me realize what life is about.
Yeah. It's so true. When I had a friend of mine who told me this, he said he never really believed in love at first sight. And because, when you get married, you date or any of these things, you always have these preconditions of, are they going to leave the toilet seat up, or, are they going to put the dishes away, or do they like the same things that I do? And I really don't like the way they chew, loudly when they're eating celery, whatever the things are that bother you about that individual. But you kind of get over them and just kind of move, and you kind of adapt and figure out, can I coexist with this person? But when you have a child, and the first time you see them, you don't know anything about this thing. It's just this little puddle of noise and, whatever that comes out, and you love it instantly. And then as it's growing and developing, it's now 6 months and a year, and you think, I love this thing more than I ever think I could. And then 6 months later, like, no, I actually have more love in me, and I love this thing even more.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you talk about those kids, because it just brought me back to the moment of when I thought about when we had my kids. And I thought about that when they were young, and those moments of as they came out. And I mean, my kids now are 15, 12, and 9. And so we're at that sort of middle a little bit where you're learning about who the people they are becoming. And, but you still love them the same. But it's just interesting at that moment when you first meet them, there's no question.
Yeah.
You just love them.
What I tell people is this, is that, as a 15-year-old, going through to, if you went to university or graduating, or when you're 20 or 21, it's me. What do I want? What am I going to do this weekend?
Yeah.
Where's my buddies? What are my buddies going to do this weekend? All those kind of things. Then, perhaps you meet somebody and you have a partner and you say, we, and then, God willing, your family grows and you have, you have 4 children. By the way, all those teenagers, I will tell you, think that you're not very smart right now, but when you're 25, when they're 25, you'll get a lot smarter. That's what
amazing.
happens in the world.
I'm hoping I do.
But you go from me to us to we to doing different things, and yes, go for it. But here's something that I was not expecting. I was totally astounded by it. Gary Keller is a little bit younger than me. He's 1 year younger than I am, but he had grandchildren before I did. And I was working, and I get a text. I get a text from Gary Keller. So, you want to take a look at it. And I open it up, and it's a video and a photo of him playing with his granddaughter. I go, well, he must have sent it to the wrong person, like, why, so I call him, I go, hey, what, I get, I think you sent this to the wrong person. He goes, no, I'm sending this to tell you your future. I'm sending you to tell you that you shouldn't be sitting there working. You've got other things in your life.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I talked to you about mentorship and leadership and some of the different things, my whole life had been me making money for other people. Nobody ever asked me about my life. And it was a very important lesson for me that I get as many texts from Gary about family and his family and my family as I do. Well, I don't get any texts from him that tell me what to do about business. Usually that's a meeting or we have a conversation, but he lets me know what's important. the other kind of thing that's always on my mind is a story that that I think about with my daughter. My daughter was injured in a ski accident, and she's fine now, but at the time it was very serious. And she was in Canada and I was in Austria, and so it was a while till I got back, and we had to worry about surgery and recovery and all those different things. And I was sitting with her and holding her in my arms, and for 2 or 3 or 4 days we were together, and she would fall asleep in my arms. And I thought she was asleep this one time, and I was talking to God, and I said, God, I'm begging you right now, take this, give this to me, take this away from my little girl and give it to me. And my daughter wakes up and she looks at me and she goes, well, why would you want that? Why do you want to be hurt? I said, well, because you're my little girl. I would die for you. She says, well, why would you do that? Like, no, nobody wants, and I could hear her talking later on to her mother and saying, Dad's lost it. I don't know what he's doing, on and on. Well, now my son has 2 children. My daughter is an aunt. We just spent long weekend in Canada with them, and I see all of them interacting, and my daughter comes walking past me, pokes me in the shoulder and says, I understand what you were telling me.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
until you can go through the experience of life, I think it's somewhat important. I don't want to go through recessions, depressions, but unless you've gone through 1, 2, or 3, and you know that there's a tunnel at the end, unless you've seen businesses grow and shrink, unless you have gone through all these difficult economic times, unless you've gone through negotiations of buying and selling a property, unless you've dealt with buyers and sellers, unless you've done all of those things, you don't know your craft. What you want is a seasoned professional who has been able to understand all the things that are necessary on how to do that. For people who are new in the business, that's why you get a mentor, a coach, or a leader, is to accelerate your knowledge and education so that you can bridge that gap instead of being an apprentice for 7 years, and learning how to be a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician, an apprentice for 7 years. You can shorten that time frame down by associating and being with people who have seen it, done it, and know where the pitfalls are to give you some advice on how to do it easier, better, and faster.
Absolutely. I always akin that to this, is you can stand at the edge of a jungle and you could look at that jungle and say, I want to get to Rio. You can walk through the jungle and try to carve out paths, get, fingers bitten off and toes bitten off by piranhas, get malaria, get all these scratches and bruises and all these things. But after a year, 2 years, 3 years trekking through the jungle, you finally make it to Rio. You did it on your own. Or you could turn to the left, you could grab the keys off the counter, get in the car, in about 20 minutes, you're in Rio and you're on the backs of giants. And I'd rather be on the backs of giants.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Until you've done it, you don't know. I did 2 things that make me laugh when you were describing that and going forward. So I had a team, and they were not working together as a team. They were people who were competing against each other. There were 27 vice presidents at Remax, and they were not working with each other. They were not cooperating. They always just wanted to be seen by the founder. If he sees me, maybe I'll get more work. I'll get a promotion. He'll like me. So I couldn't get them to work together. So I went out and I bought 27 hockey sticks, and I went to the parking garage and we played ball hockey on the parking garage. And none of them had ever held a hockey stick in their hands. They'd never seen a hockey game, maybe on television. The Colorado Avalanche had won the Stanley Cup, but they'd never seen any of those different things. And so to go there and the first thing that happened is they said, well, this is dumb. I made them, by the way, I bought tape and I made them tape their sticks so that they could identify their sticks when they dropped them and they could see what was theirs. And there were some that got really creative, and there were some that were really nice, and some didn't, they thought it was dumb. And then we start playing and we go forward and we do all these things. And then, you could see some people got into it and some people went off to the side and, all the different things. And, they, at the end of it, what came of it was an understanding that until they did something, until they started working together as a team, they were never going to score a goal just by themselves, right? That was the whole purpose. Month went by, we had our monthly meeting, and they said, okay, what are you going to do now? And I didn't have it, but I put up on the screen a photo of skates, and I said, okay, now we're going to go to a rink, and we're going to have skates on, and we're going to play hockey. And all of them to a person went, no way. It was hard enough with running shoes on cement to play this game. There's no way we're going on skates. The second thing that I always think about is my son is a great golfer now, and he's done well, and he's a great golfer. He's not a professional, but he's done well. He's a lawyer, and he uses for business, for pleasure with his buddies. He goes golfing. But I remember as a teenager, we went golfing, and I'm not the best golfer. But I gave him a golf club in his hand, and he was a baseball player, he was a hockey player, he played lacrosse, he was an athlete. And I gave him this golf club, and it was a useless tool in his hand. And it's until you play golf, you can watch the videos, you can see Tiger Woods and Scotty Scheffler on television, and they make it look easy. They're great. Doesn't matter where the ball is. It could be off the tee. It could be in the rough. It could be in the sand. It could be putting. It's easy. You see these guys, it's easy. And then you put that tool in their hands, and all of a sudden it's a device that's not really suited for which it's to be used. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why is it all curved like that, and on and on?
I just think of Robin Williams in his speech on golf.
If you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it in private with headphones, because you can't. But that's exactly it's hilarious with a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
And so I say this to people is how do I become a real estate agent? How did you learn how to golf? Go and try it a few times, and 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, you'll get better at it. You'll get better at it as you do more and more things. And that's like anything, I think, in the world. Don't give up. There's too many people, in my opinion, that kind of, meet some challenges and give up. And perseverance to me is extremely important. Is that person, it's how I choose team members sometimes, we have a great saying, Gary Keller at Keller Williams created this, is fail forward. Mm-hmm. And all of us in the world are terrified of failure because people will think poorly of us. If I fail, I might lose money and I'll get fired. You don't want to have a banker fail, any of those things. Gary Keller knows that failure isn't going to be catastrophic, but you'll learn from that and you'll be able to go forward. And he has said to me more times than I can ever mention to you, go fail forward, go fail. Let's see what you can do. We've opened businesses in 60 countries this week, today. In a few hours from now, I'll be opening our second office in India. Nobody ever imagined that we would be able to do any of those things. I said to Gary, going to India, largest population, different way of doing business, what are you worried about? And he said to me, I'm worried that you won't persevere, that you'll give up too early. Good way to go. We're opening our second office. I'm going to give him an update next Monday. And I'm going into that meeting planning our third, fourth, and fifth office.
That's amazing. If we look at a year from now, because we're not going to talk about 5 years because we know how that goes. But we look at a year from now. What is the lens? What does it look like for you? What is the big thing that you're going to accomplish this year?
So I always love this question. And I always answer it this way, by the way. You already prefaced it by saying 5 years. Stalin in the Soviet Union was the only person who had 5-year plans. And they all met their 5-year plans by building tractors. And it was fictitious because nobody has a clue what's going to happen 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So that's useless. A 1-year plan, is very, so part of my answer is I don't know. What I've trained myself and the teams and the people that I work with is to be reactive. I love hockey. You know, I think you can see in behind me a mirror image of a hockey player jersey. It's up on my wall, but it's flashed here
Yeah.
behind me. I love hockey, and I'm a diehard Toronto Maple Leafs fan who will, I'm convinced, never win the Stanley Cup in my lifetime, but they'll win next year. I know they'll win next year.
Always. Yeah.
But I equate business to a hockey game. So, you know, the average score is 2-1, 1-0, 4-2, 5-1, you know, something like that. And a game, you know, starts with a dropping of the puck and the puck goes someplace. What are you going to do now? That's business to me in some cases. You know that there's some rules. There's a game, there's a rink, there's 6 players on the ice for each team. There's a bench, there's a coach, there's people in the stands. You know, you've got a stick, you've got pads. There's some things that are there. But as soon as that puck drops, what's going to happen? Now, they always say Wayne Gretzky knew where the puck was going. You know, he didn't go where the puck was. He was skating to where the puck was going to be. So
Yeah.
he was one player in 120 years who knew where the puck was going. I don't have that skill or ability in business to know. I am just prepared to make sure that I have people who surround me to know when that puck drops and there's a face-off and one player gets the puck, what are you going to do now? When COVID hit, I use this example with everybody. Puck dropped, guys. What are you going to do now? And they all looked at me and said, well, you know, we got to go home. Yeah. So now you're in the corner and you've got to skate up. And now you're at your own face-off circle. You're at the blue line. Somebody's going to come along. And then we got shut down for a month. We were told we had to go home for a week, then a day, a week, a month. In some places in the world, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Canada, the better part of Canada, was shut down for 1 or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was a hockey game. To me, It was that situation that said you got to cross the blue line and somebody came and checked you and forced you back. And then it goes back to your own goalie again. The goalie puts it up to the defenseman. The defenseman puts it up to the left winger. The left winger crosses the center ice, puts it over to a center man, puts it over the right wing. Right wing scores. Oh, start again.
Yep. Puck drops again.
Puck drops again. I'm going to say names that none of your listeners will ever know. But whenever I'm putting, I always say this in my mind at one time, and some of the people who know me laugh. I'll come up to the ball, and I'll look at the putt, and I'll go, nobody knows where this kid came from. He's from North York, Ontario. Bill Soteroff, here he is. He shoots it over to Papin. Papin over to Tim Horton. Horton over to Mahavlich. Mahavlich over to Keon. Keon shoots, he scores! And everybody looks at me and says, are you playing golf or what are you doing? Like, and you know, most of those players are long gone. They're definitely not playing. Some of them are dead.
Yeah.
But the way I think of my life is I'm that 10-year-old boy and I'm playing a game and I'm going to play it as hard as I can so that I'm out on the street and it's really cold and I take my mitts off and then I take my coat off and I'm sweating and my mom calls me and says, Billy, it's time for dinner. And I go, no, I want to play some more. So that's a 20-minute answer for you to tell you a year from now, I want to play some more. I want to keep going. Mom, I don't want to go in. The street lights aren't on yet. I want to play some more.
It is such an interesting answer because it actually had a hidden message in it as well for some of the audience, especially those in Canada, because when you named all the players, there's one in particular that everybody will know, and it's not because he's a hockey player. Because when he hung up the skates, he still played more, and he played in the game of coffee. And Bill, this has been an absolute pleasure talking about roles to riches and I was going to say rolls to royalties. I guess that would be more Keller Williams. Rolls to royalties. And I've learned so much in our conversation, and I really thank you for dedicating the time to me and to the audience. It's been a true pleasure.
It's a great honor to be with you. You know, I should have said it at the beginning. Over this last few months to get to know you has been one of the rewards of my life, is that you're a bright, young, shining star. And your children, your family are very lucky to have you in their lives. And I'm lucky that I got to meet you and spend this time with you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate it. And guys, this is the money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next one.